The rain wasn't gentle that evening. It came down hard, slapping the pavement like it had something to prove. Cold drops stung the cheeks of the little girl standing outside the tall black gate. She was small for her age, her thin jacket soaked through, her sneakers squelching with every tiny shift of her feet. Her hands were shoved deep in her pockets, not because she was cold, though she was, but because she didn't know what else to do with them. She'd walked for what felt like forever, past bus stops and shuttered storefronts, past people who hurried by without looking twice. No one had stopped. No one ever did. She looked up at the house behind the gate. It wasn't just big, it was enormous. Stone walls, tall windows with soft golden light glowing behind heavy curtains. A driveway so clean it looked like no car had ever dared to dirty it. Trees lined the property like silent guards. Everything about it screamed, "Stay away," but she'd run out of places to go. Her name wasn't important right now, not to the world anyway. But inside her chest, her heart hammered like a trapped bird. She'd rehearsed the words in her head 100 times on the walk here, whispering them under her breath like a prayer. Now, standing in front of the intercom box mounted on the gatepost, her throat tightened. She reached out with a trembling finger and pressed the button. It beeped softly and a red light blinked on. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just the drumming of rain and the distant hum of the city. She swallowed hard, her eyes burning. Maybe no one was home. Maybe they wouldn't answer. Maybe they'd yell at her to go away like the last person had when she'd asked for help at the corner store. Then a voice crackled through the speaker. Deep, calm, a little tired. Yes? She opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. Her lips shook. She took a shaky breath and tried again. I need help, she whispered. There was a pause. Longer this time. She could almost hear the person on the other end deciding whether to hang up or not. She squeezed her eyes shut and forced the words out before she lost her nerve. They hurt my mom, she said, her voice cracking like thin ice. She's dying. Please. Silence. The rain kept falling. She stared at the wet ground, waiting for the click of the intercom cutting off, waiting for the sound of footsteps walking away. But instead the voice came back, softer now, slower. Who hurt your mom? Men, she said quickly. At the clinic. They wanted money. She didn't have any. They hit her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She won't wake up. Another pause. Then, how old are you? 8, she said. Almost 9. Are you alone? She nodded, then remembered he couldn't see her. Yes, where's your dad? He's not around, she said. The words practiced from years of explaining something she barely understood herself. The man on the other end didn't ask more questions right away. She heard a sigh, quiet, heavy, and then the sound of a chair scraping back. Her stomach twisted. Was he calling the police? Would they take her away? She'd heard stories about kids like her ending up in places with no windows and locked doors. But then a different sound. Footsteps, not over the speaker, real ones. Coming closer, her breath caught. She stepped back instinctively, pressing herself against the cold metal of the gate. The rain dripped from her hair into her eyes, but she didn't wipe it away. She just watched. A figure appeared at the front door of the house, a man in a dark sweater, no coat, no umbrella. He moved slowly like he wasn't used to walking in the rain. His hair was neat, his face clean-shaven, and even from this distance, she could see the lines around his eyes, the kind that came from thinking too much, not from laughing. He stopped at the top of the steps and looked straight at her. Not down his nose, not with suspicion, but with something she couldn't name. Curiosity? Concern? She'd seen pity before on the faces of teachers, nurses, neighbors, but this wasn't that. This felt real. He walked down the steps, his shoes clicking on the stone path, and stopped a few feet from the gate. He didn't open it right away, just studied her, taking in her soaked clothes, her chapped lips, the way her shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear. What's your name? He asked gently. She hesitated. Mom always said not to tell strangers your name, but this man hadn't yelled. He hadn't called her a nuisance. And her mom was lying in a hospital bed with tubes in her arms, and the nurse had said, if she doesn't get that surgery soon, she couldn't finish the thought. I'm the one who knocked, she said instead. He almost smiled. Almost. I figured, but I'd still like to know your name. She looked down at her shoes. It's Maya. Maya, he repeated like he was testing the sound of it. Okay, Maya, my name's Daniel. I live here, she nodded. That much was obvious. Now, he said, stepping closer to the gate. Tell me again, What happened to your mom? She took a deep breath and the story spilled out in pieces, like puzzle parts she'd been holding too tightly. Her mom worked nights at a small clinic on the south side. She cleaned rooms, restocked supplies, sometimes helped hold patients' hands when they were scared. Last Tuesday, 2 men came in just before closing. They demanded the cash from the register. There wasn't much, maybe $50. When her mom said that was all, one of them shoved her. She fell backward, hit her head on the edge of a metal cabinet. They took the money and ran. By the time the night janitor found her, she was unconscious. The ambulance came, but the hospital was overcrowded. They stabilized her, but the doctors said there was bleeding in her brain. She needed surgery, a special kind, expensive, and without insurance they couldn't do it right away. They put her on a waiting list. But Maya had overheard a nurse whispering to another, "If she doesn't get that operation in the next few days, she might not make it." They'd been living in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. When the rent went unpaid for 2 months, the landlord changed the locks. Her mom's purse, her ID, her little savings, everything was still inside. Maya had stayed with a neighbor for a few nights, but the woman's husband said they couldn't keep her. So she'd been sleeping in the hospital waiting room, curled up in a plastic chair, waking up every hour to check on her mom. Today, she'd overheard a doctor say the word miracle. That's when she knew she had to try something, anything. She remembered her mom once mentioning that a big company downtown, the one that made the phones everyone used, was run by a man who gave money to hospitals. She didn't know his name, but she knew where he lived. She'd seen it on the news once during a charity gala. So she walked, for hours, through rain and traffic and fear. She finished talking and looked up at Daniel, her eyes wide and wet, not just from the rain. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said simply. "And if she dies, I'll be all alone." Daniel didn't move for a long time. He just stood there, rain soaking the shoulders of his sweater, his expression unreadable. Inside the house, lights flickered as someone, maybe a housekeeper, maybe security, peeked through a window. But Daniel didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on Maya. Most people would have called the police, or child services, or just closed the gate and gone back inside. He could have said, "This isn't my problem." And honestly, it wasn't. He ran a billion-dollar company. He dealt with mergers, stock prices, global markets, not little girls showing up at his gate in the middle of a storm with stories of violence and hospitals and dying mothers, but something about her, the raw honesty in her voice, the way she didn't beg, just stated the facts like they were too heavy to carry alone, cut through the layers of routine and privilege he'd built around himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. Not a fancy one, just a simple metal key on a plain ring. He unlocked the gate. It swung open with a soft creak. "Come inside, Maya," he said. She didn't move right away. She stared at the open gate like it might be a trick. You're letting me in?" "Yes," he said. "You're soaked. You must be freezing, but I'm dirty," she said, looking down at her muddy shoes. "I'll mess up your floor." He actually smiled this time, a small, tired thing, but real. Floors can be cleaned. People can't. She took one hesitant step forward, then another, until she stood just inside the gate. The rain still fell behind her, but under the overhang of the porch it was quiet. Warm air drifted from the open front door. Daniel held out a hand, not to grab her, just to offer. "Let's get you dry. Then you can tell me more about your mom." She looked at his hand. It was clean, strong, with short nails and a silver watch on his wrist. Nothing like the rough, calloused hands of the men who'd hurt her mom. Slowly she reached out and took it. His grip was gentle, steady. As they walked toward the house, Maya glanced back once at the street, the world she'd come from, full of noise and danger and empty promises. Then she looked ahead at the warm light spilling from the doorway, at the man who'd opened his gate when no one else would. She didn't know it yet. But this moment, the knock, the rain, the quiet pleas when Nana would change everything. Not just for her and her mom, but for him too. Because sometimes the smallest voice in the storm is the one that wakes you up. Inside, the house was quieter than she expected. No loud music, no shouting. Just the soft hum of a heater and the faint smell of coffee. A woman in a uniform, maybe the housekeeper, stood near the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide with surprise, but she didn't say anything. Daniel nodded at her and she disappeared down a hallway. He led Maya into a room with soft couches and a fireplace that wasn't loud. Sit, he said, pointing to a chair. "I'll get you a towel." She perched on the edge of the seat, careful not to lean back. Everything around her looked expensive. Thick rugs, framed paintings, a glass table so shiny she could see her own reflection, blurry and rain-streaked. Daniel came back with a thick white towel and a blanket. He handed them to her without a word. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and rubbed her hair with the towel, her fingers stiff from cold. "Do you want something to drink?" he asked. "Hot chocolate tea?" She shook her head. "I'm okay." He sat across from her, not too close, giving her space. "Your mom's in the county hospital?" She nodded. "Room 412. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then put it away. "I'm going to make a call. But first, promise me something." She looked up, wary. "Don't run," he said gently. "No matter what happens next, stay here." "Okay," she swallowed. "Okay." He stood and walked into another room, closing the door behind him. Maya sat very still, listening to the muffled sound of his voice. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was firm, urgent. After a few minutes, he came back. "I've spoken to someone at the hospital," he said. "They're going to move your mom to a private room tonight, and the surgery team will review her case first thing in the morning." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Really?" "Really," he said. "But Maya, this isn't magic. It might take time, and there are no guarantees, but she'll get the best care possible." "I'll make sure of it." She didn't know what to say. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "Now you're not going back to that waiting room tonight. You'll stay here. There's a guest room upstairs. Clean sheets, warm bed." She blinked. "Here, in your house?" "Yes, but I don't even know you." He looked at her for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "that's when you need help the most." She didn't understand everything he meant, but she felt it, the weight of those words, the quiet truth in them. Later, as she lay in a soft bed under thick blankets, wearing borrowed pajamas that were too big, she listened to the silence of the house. No sirens, no shouting, just the steady tick of a clock somewhere down the hall. For the first time in days, she didn't feel alone, and downstairs Daniel sat in his study, staring at a photo on his desk, his own mother decades ago standing in a factory line. Her hands rough, her smile tired but proud. He hadn't thought about that photo in years. But tonight he understood something he'd forgotten. That kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's about answering the knock. Even when it's raining, even when it's hard, even when it changes you. Outside, the storm began to ease. The rain softened to a whisper. And somewhere in a hospital not far away, a woman's heart kept beating. One more night, one more chance. Morning came quietly, without fanfare. Sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains of the guest room, painting soft stripes across the carpet. Maya woke slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then it all rushed back. The rain, the gate, the man with the tired eyes who'd opened his door. She sat up, pulling the blanket tighter. The pajamas she wore were soft, clean, and smelled faintly of lavender. Her own clothes were gone, probably in the wash, she guessed. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, when a kind nurse had given her half a peanut butter sandwich in the hospital cafeteria. She crept to the door and opened it just a crack. The hallway was empty, quiet. Downstairs she heard the low murmur of voices, calm, professional. She tiptoed to the top of the stairs and peered down. Daniel stood in the foyer talking to two people in dark suits. Security, maybe. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward the stairs. Maya shrank back, her heart pounding. Were they talking about her? Was he sending her away? But then Daniel said something firm, and the two men nodded and left through the front door. He ran a hand through his hair and turned right as Maya stepped into view. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then his expression softened. "Good morning," he said. "Hi," she said softly. "Did you sleep okay?" She nodded. Better than I have in a while." He smiled faintly. "I'm glad." "Come on down." "Breakfast is ready," she hesitated. "I don't want to be trouble." "You're not trouble," he said, and there was something in his voice, steady, sure, that made her believe him. "Besides, I could use the company." She walked down the stairs slowly, her bare feet silent on the wood. In the kitchen, a woman in a crisp apron set a plate on the table. Scrambled eggs, toast, a small bowl of fruit. Steam curled from a mug of hot chocolate. "Sit," Daniel said, pulling out a chair for her. Maya sat, her hands in her lap. "This is a lot." It's just breakfast, he said, sitting across from her. Eat. She picked up her fork, her fingers trembling slightly. The eggs were warm, fluffy. She took a bite and nearly cried. It had been so long since she'd had a real meal at a real table. As she ate, Daniel watched her, not in a creepy way, but like he was trying to understand something. I called the hospital this morning, he said after a while. Your mom's still stable. They moved her to a private room like I asked. A neurosurgeon is reviewing her scans today. Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Will they do the surgery? They're considering it, he said carefully. It depends on a few things, her condition, the risks. But they're taking it seriously now. That's a start, she nodded, swallowing hard. Thank you again, he waved it off. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go. After breakfast, he asked if she wanted to go see her mom. Her eyes lit up. Really, can we? Yes, he said. But first we need to get you some proper clothes. He drove her himself, not in a flashy sports car, but a quiet, dark sedan that smelled like leather and coffee. They stopped at a small department store downtown. Inside, he didn't make a big show of it. Just handed her a basket and said, pick what you need. Shoes, socks, a coat, whatever fits. Maya wandered the aisles, overwhelmed. Everything looked so new, so bright. She chose simple things. A pair of sturdy sneakers, jeans that weren't too big, a thick hoodie in navy blue. She even picked out a small backpack. When she brought the items to the register, Daniel paid without looking at the total. Back in the car, she hugged the shopping bag like it was treasure. No one's ever bought me new clothes before, she admitted quietly. He glanced at her. Everyone deserves to feel warm and clean. At the hospital, things were different. The front desk staff greeted Daniel by name. A nurse met them in the lobby and led them straight to the elevator. No waiting, no questions. They stepped off on the 4th floor, and there it was. Room 412, now with a private, authorized personnel-only sign on the door. Inside, the room was quiet, calm. Sunlight streamed through the window. Her mom lay in the bed, still pale, still connected to machines, but the monitors beeped steadily. A nurse adjusted an IV bag and smiled gently at Maya. She had a good night, the nurse said. Vitals are stronger. Maya walked to the bedside and touched her mom's hand. It was cool but not cold. Mom, she whispered. It's me, no response. But Maya didn't expect one. She pulled up a chair and sat, holding her mom's fingers like they were the most precious thing in the world. Daniel lingered near the door, not intruding. After a few minutes, Maya looked up. You can come closer, she said. He stepped in and stood beside her. She's strong, he said. How do you know? Because she raised you, he said simply. Maya looked down, tears welling. I keep talking to her. The nurse said hearing is the last thing to go. So I tell her about school, about the park we used to visit, about how I got an A on my math test last month. She sniffed. I hope she hears me. I'm sure she does, Daniel said. They stayed for an hour. Maya read aloud from a book she'd brought in her new backpack, a story about a brave mouse who saved his village. Her voice was small but clear. Daniel sat in the corner listening, watching the rise and fall of the woman's chest. On the drive back, Maya was quiet. Not sad, just thoughtful. Why are you helping us? She finally asked. He kept his eyes on the road. Because someone should have. She waited for more, but he didn't elaborate. Later, she'd learned that his own father had left when he was young. That his mother worked double shifts cleaning offices just to keep the lights on. That he'd once slept in a bus station for 3 nights after getting kicked out of a shelter, for being too old. He never said those things out, loud, not then, but she could feel it in the way he looked at her mom, in the way he never rushed her, never made her feel like a burden. Back at the house, Daniel introduced her to a woman named Rosa, who'd worked for him for years. She'll help you settle in, he said. And if you need anything at all, you tell her. Rosa had kind eyes and hands that moved like they knew exactly what to do. She showed Maya to a small study room with a desk, books, and a window that looked out over the garden. You can do your schoolwork here, she said. Or just sit and think. It's yours while you're here. Maya ran her fingers over the smooth wood of the desk. I haven't done homework in weeks. That's okay, Rosa said gently. We'll get you caught up. That afternoon, Daniel made another call. One Maya didn't hear, but she saw the look on his face afterward. He came to the study room and sat across from her. I spoke with someone at the clinic where your mom worked, he said. They're going to cover her medical leave, and they're setting up a fund for her recovery. Maya's eyes widened. But they said they couldn't afford it. They can now, he said. I made a donation to the clinic with one condition, that they take care of their people, especially the ones who show up every day and never ask for anything. She didn't know what to say, so she just said, okay. Days passed. Maya settled into a rhythm. Mornings at the hospital with her mom, afternoons back at the house doing schoolwork with Rosa's help or reading in the garden. Evenings eating dinner with Daniel, just the two of them at a long table that felt too big but somehow less lonely with him there. He never asked for anything in return. Never made her feel like she owed him. He just showed up, like when she had a nightmare and woke up crying, and he was there with a glass of water and a quiet, "You're safe." Or when she struggled with fractions and he sat with her for an hour, drawing little boxes and circles until it made sense. One evening, as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Maya asked, "Do you have kids?" He shook his head. "No. Wife?" "No," she nodded. "So it's just you in this big house?" "Just me," he said. "And Rosa, and now you for a while. Do you get lonely?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Sometimes. But loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. It's about whether anyone really sees you." Maya thought about that. "I think my mom saw me," she said softly. "Even when she was tired. Even when we had nothing. She always knew when I was scared." "She sounds like an incredible woman," Daniel said. "She is," Maya said, her voice firm. "She's the best." A week after Maya first knocked on the gate, the hospital called. The neurosurgeon had reviewed everything. They were ready to operate. Daniel drove her to the hospital before dawn. In the pre-op waiting area, Maya held her mom's hand as nurses prepared her for surgery. "Be brave," she whispered. "I'll be right here when you wake up." The surgery lasted 6 hours. Maya sat in the waiting room the whole time, clutching her backpack like a lifeline. Daniel stayed with her, bringing her water, sandwiches, blankets. He didn't talk much, just sat beside her, a quiet presence in the storm of fear. Finally, the surgeon came out, tired but smiling. "It went well," he said. "We relieved the pressure on her brain. There's still a long recovery ahead, but she's out of immediate danger." Maya burst into tears. Happy, relieved, exhausted tears. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder, and for the first time, she leaned into it. Later that night, back at the house, she couldn't sleep. She went downstairs and found Daniel in his study, staring out the window. "She's going to be okay," he said without turning around. "I know," Maya said. "But what happens now?" He turned to face her. "Now you keep being her daughter, and I'll keep making sure you both have what you need to heal, to rest, to start over. But you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," he interrupted gently. "But I want to." She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, she saw not just a rich man in a big house, but someone who carried his own quiet pain. Someone who remembered what it felt like to be small and scared and alone. "I'm glad I knocked," she said. He smiled, a real one this time. "So am I." In the days that followed, small miracles began to unfold. Her mom opened her eyes. She squeezed Maya's hand. She whispered her name. Each moment was fragile, precious, like a bird learning to fly again. And through it all, Daniel was there, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as a steady hand in the dark. He never took credit, never posted about it online, never told the press. He just did what needed to be done because it was the right thing. One afternoon, as Maya sat by her mom's bedside reading aloud, her mom's fingers twitched. Then slowly her eyes fluttered open. "Maya?" she whispered, her voice rough but clear. Maya dropped the book and threw her arms around her mom, careful not to pull on the tubes. "I'm here, Mom, I'm right here." Tears streamed down her face. Her mom's hand came up weakly to stroke her hair. "You're safe," she murmured. "You're okay." "I am," Maya said. "Because someone helped us." Her mom looked past her toward the doorway where Daniel stood quietly watching. Their eyes met. No words were needed. Just a nod, a silent thank you that carried the weight of a lifetime. Later, as Daniel walked back to his car, Maya ran after him. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. He stopped and looked down at her. "Every day," he said. "Until you don't need me to." And in that moment, something shifted, not just in their lives, but in the way they saw the world. Because kindness, real kindness, isn't about grand gestures or headlines. It's about showing up, listening, staying. It's about a little girl knocking in the rain and a man choosing to open the door. The days after the surgery moved slowly, like honey dripping from a spoon. Maya's mom was awake now, really awake, but her body was still weak, her words sometimes slurred, her movements careful and slow. The doctors called it progress. Maya called it a miracle. And Daniel? He just kept showing up, but not everything was easy. Back at the big house, Maya started noticing things she hadn't before. The way Daniel's phone buzzed constantly, sharp, insistent sounds that made his jaw tighten. The way he'd disappear into his study for hours, only to come out looking more tired than when he went in. Once she overheard a heated phone call through the closed door. "No, I don't care what the board thinks. Some things are more important than quarterly reports." She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. Helping her and her mom wasn't just a simple act for him. It came with consequences. People were questioning him, pushing back. One afternoon, while Rosa helped Maya with her spelling homework in the sunroom, Daniel came in looking unusually tense. He sat across from them, rubbing his temples. "Maya," he said gently, "some people are going to ask questions. About you. About why you're here. About your mom." She looked up, pencil frozen mid-word. "Who?" "People who work with me. Reporters, maybe. They might say things, not nice things." Her stomach dropped. "Like what?" He chose his words carefully. "They might say I'm being foolish. That I don't know you well enough. That this is a risk. Or worse, they might say you're pretending. That this is all a trick." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "It's not." "I swear, I know," he said quickly, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I know it's real. But not everyone will believe that. And I need you to be ready. If someone asks you questions you don't have to answer, you can say, 'Talk to Mr. Daniel,' okay?" She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Okay." Later that evening, as they ate dinner, just the two of them again, Daniel didn't touch his food. He stared at his plate like it held answers. "Are you in trouble?" Maya asked quietly. He looked up, surprised. "Why do you ask?" "Because you look like you're carrying something heavy." He let out a small, tired laugh. "You're a good observer." "I had to be," she said simply. "When you live like we did, you learn to read people fast. If they're angry, if they're lying, if they're about to walk away." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "On some of the people I work with, they don't understand why I'm doing this. They think I should focus only on business. That helping you is a distraction. But you saved my mom," she said, her voice firm. "That's not a distraction, that's what matters." He looked at her for a long time. Then he pushed his plate aside. "You know, when I was your age, I used to think rich people had it all figured out. That they never worried, never hurt, never felt lost. But the truth is, money doesn't fix everything. It doesn't fix loneliness. It doesn't fix guilt. It doesn't fix the feeling that you've forgotten who you are." Maya tilted her head. "Did you forget?" "Maybe a little," he admitted. "I got so busy building something big I stopped noticing the small things. Like a kid standing in the rain with nowhere to go." She reached across the table and put her small hand over his. "You noticed me." He turned his hand and held hers. "And I'm glad I did." The next morning, a car pulled up to the house, black, sleek, with tinted windows. Two men in suits got out, not the security guards from before. These men looked sharper, colder. Daniel met them at the door. Maya watched from the top of the stairs, hidden behind the banister. "We're not asking you to stop," one of the men said in a low voice. "We're asking you to be smart. This girl, her story, it's all over the rumor mill now. If this blows up in the press, it could hurt the company. Investors are nervous." "She's not a story," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. "She's a child whose mother was nearly killed. And if the company can't stand behind basic human decency, then maybe it's not the company I thought it was." There was a long silence. Then the other man said, "Just be careful. Emotions make people do reckless things." "Maybe," Daniel said, "but indifference makes people do worse." The men left. Daniel stood in the doorway for a long time, watching their car disappear down the street. Then he turned and looked up right at Maya. She didn't hide. She walked down the stairs slowly. "Did you hear all that?" he asked. "Most of it," she said. He sighed. "I'm sorry you had to. Are you going to stop helping us?" "No," he said without hesitation. "But I might have to do it differently." That afternoon he called his lawyer. By evening, A quiet trust had been set up, an anonymous fund to cover all of Maya's mom's medical bills, rehabilitation, and living expenses for the next year. No names attached, no press. Just clean, quiet support. He explained it to Maya over hot cocoa in the kitchen. This way, no one can say I'm doing it for attention. And no one can use your story against you. She stirred her cocoa slowly. But won't people still talk? Probably, he said. But their words won't change what's real. And what's real is that your mom is getting better, and you're safe. And that's what matters. A few days later, Maya's mom was moved to a rehabilitation center, a quiet place with gardens and kind nurses and therapists who knew how to help people relearn how to walk, how to speak clearly, how to trust their bodies again. Daniel drove them there himself. Maya helped her mom into a wheelchair, careful with the IV line still taped to her arm. Her mom was thin, her hair shorter from the surgery, but her eyes were clear now, alert, present. "Thank you," she said to Daniel as they stood by the car. Her voice was soft but steady. He shook his head. "Don't thank me. Thank your daughter. She's the one who walked through the rain to save you." Maya's mom looked at her little girl and tears filled her eyes. "She's always been my brave one." Inside the rehab center, they showed them to a bright room with a window and a small bed for Maya to stay overnight if she wanted. The first evening, as her mom slept, Maya sat by the window watching the sunset. Daniel didn't leave right away. He sat in the chair by the door, quiet. "Do you think she'll be okay?" Maya asked after a while. "She's already okay," he said. "Now it's just about healing. And healing takes time." "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if she never walks again? What if she forgets things? Then you'll help her remember," he said. "And if she can't walk, you'll find a way to move forward together. You've already done the hardest part, you didn't give up." She looked at him. "How do you know so much about this?" He smiled faintly. "Because I've been on the other side. I've needed help before. And the people who gave it without expecting anything back, they changed my life." He didn't say more and she didn't ask. Some stories are meant to be carried quietly. Over the next week, Daniel visited every day. Not for long, just enough to check in, bring books, sit with Maya while her mom did physical therapy. He never made a show of it. No cameras, no announcements, just presence. But the world outside didn't stay quiet. One morning, a local news station ran a short segment. Mystery benefactor helps assault victim. Rumors swirl around tech CEO. There were no photos of Maya or her mom. Daniel had made sure of that, but they mentioned the gated mansion, the late-night hospital transfers, the sudden upgrade in care. Maya saw it on the rehab center's TV and felt sick to her stomach. Daniel came that afternoon and found her curled up in a chair, arms wrapped around herself. "I saw it," she said before he could speak. He sat beside her. "I'm sorry. Are they going to find us?" "No," he said firmly. "I've taken steps. Your mom's records are sealed. Your school records are protected. No one knows where you are except the people who need to. But what if they guess?" "Then they guess," he said. "But they can't prove anything. And even if they could, it wouldn't change what we're doing." She looked up at him. "Why do you care so much?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because once, a long time ago, I was a kid who needed someone to care, and no one did." "Not really. I don't want that to happen to you." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She crept into her mom's room and lay on the edge of the bed, listening to her breathe. Her mom stirred and opened her eyes. "Maya." "Yeah, Mom, are you scared?" "A little." Her mom reached out and touched her hair. "You don't have to be. We're together now. And that man, he's good. I can see it in his eyes." "How?" "He looks at you like you matter," her mom whispered. "Like you're worth protecting." Maya closed her eyes. "I think he's lonely." "Maybe," her mom said. "But you're helping him too in your own way." The next day, Daniel didn't come alone. He brought a woman in a simple gray suit, calm, kind-faced, with glasses and a gentle voice. She introduced herself as a counselor, someone who worked with kids who'd been through hard things. "I'm not here to ask questions," she said to Maya. "I'm here to listen, whenever you're ready." Maya didn't say much that first visit, but she liked the way the woman didn't push, didn't pretend everything was fine. She just sat and let the silence be okay. After she left, Daniel asked, "How was that?" "Okay," Maya said. "She didn't treat me like I was broken." "Good," he said. "Because you're not." As the weeks passed, Maya's mom grew stronger. She took her first steps with a walker. She remembered Maya's birthday, April 12th, and whispered, "Next year, we'll have cake." She laughed for the first time since the attack, a soft, breathy sound that filled the room like sunlight. And Daniel? He started changing too. He began leaving the office earlier. He canceled meetings that could wait. He started asking Maya about her day, not out of duty but because he genuinely wanted to know. He even let her pick the movie one Friday night, a silly cartoon about talking animals, and laughed at the parts she thought were funny. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies blink in the garden, Maya asked, "Do you think we'll ever go back to how things were?" "No," he said honestly. "But maybe that's okay. Sometimes the old way wasn't the best way." She thought about that. "I don't want to go back to being scared all the time." "You won't have to," he said. "Not as long as I'm around." It wasn't a promise he had to make, but he made it anyway. Then came the day the board of directors called an emergency meeting. Daniel told Maya over breakfast. His face was tight, his coffee untouched. "They want me to step back," he said, "temporarily. They say my personal involvement is affecting company morale." Maya's fork clattered onto her plate. "Because of us?" "Because of me," he corrected gently. "Because I chose to do what I thought was right even if it didn't look professional." "What will you do?" He looked out the window. "I'll do what I've always done, what my mother taught me. Stand by people who need standing by." But Maya saw the worry in his eyes. This wasn't just about business. This was about his life's work, his identity. That afternoon, she did something she'd never done before. She wrote a letter, not to the board, not to the press, just to him. It was short, written in careful handwriting on lined paper. "Dear Mr. Daniel, I don't know much about running a company, but I know about doing the right thing. You did the right thing when no one else would. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. My mom says real strength isn't about money or power. It's about heart. You have the biggest heart I've ever seen. Don't let them make you forget that." Maya, she left it on his desk before bed. The next morning, he found her in the garden, watering the flowers Rosa had planted. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood beside her, hands in his pockets. Then he said, "Thank you for the letter." She looked up. "Did it help?" "It reminded me why I started this company in the first place," he said. "Not to impress people, not to win awards, but to build something that could help people like you." He took a deep breath. "I'm not stepping down." Her eyes widened. "But what about the board?" "They'll either understand," he said, "or they'll find someone else to run a soulless machine. And I don't want to be part of that." That week he called a company-wide meeting. No prepared speech. Just him, standing in front of hundreds of employees and saying, "I've been told that caring too much is a liability, but I believe it's our greatest asset. From now on, this company will measure success not just in profit, but in people. We're expanding healthcare coverage. We're creating a fund for employees in crisis, and we're starting a program to support victims of violence in our community." The room was silent at first. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon the whole room was on its feet. Maya watched it all on a live stream Rosa pulled up on her tablet. Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness but from pride. Later, Daniel came to the rehab center. He didn't look triumphant. He looked peaceful. "You changed everything," Maya said. "No," he said, sitting beside her. "You did. You knocked. And that one act reminded me what really matters." Outside, the sun was setting again. But this time, the light felt different, warmer, fuller, like hope taking root. And in that quiet moment, two lives, once broken, once lost, were stitching themselves back together, not in spite of the world, but because of the kindness that still lived inside it. Time has a way of softening sharp edges. What once felt like an emergency, the fear, the hospital alarms, the cold dread in the pit of Maya's stomach, began to settle into something quieter, something steadier. Her mom was walking now, not with a cane but with slow, careful steps that grew stronger every day. She still tired easily, and sometimes words tangled on her tongue, but her eyes were clear, her hugs firm, and her laugh, though softer than before, was real. They had moved out of the rehab center into a small apartment Daniel had arranged, not in some fancy building but in a quiet neighborhood with trees and a park nearby. It wasn't big, Just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled like toast in the mornings, and a window seat where Maya liked to read. But it was theirs. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like home. Daniel didn't just drop them off and disappear. He checked in. Not every day, because he knew they needed space to heal as a family, but often enough that Maya never doubted he cared. Sometimes he'd bring groceries. Other times he'd sit at their tiny kitchen table with a cup of tea and ask how her mom's therapy was going, or if Maya had finished the book she'd been reading. He never acted like he was doing them a favor. He just showed up like a friend might, but what surprised Maya most wasn't his generosity, it was how he changed. The man who used to speak in sharp, clipped sentences on the phone now listened more than he talked. He'd started visiting community centers on weekends, not with cameras or press releases, but with his sleeves rolled up, helping serve meals or fix broken shelves. He even began mentoring a group of teenagers from a local after-school program. Kids who reminded him, he once admitted quietly, of himself at that age. Smart, scared, and trying to figure out if the world had a place for them. One Saturday morning, Maya's mom was at her physical therapy appointment, and Daniel came by to take Maya to the library. As they walked down the street, he asked, "Would you like to come with me to the center tomorrow? There's a workshop for kids your age, art, storytelling, that sort of thing." Maya hesitated. "Will there be other kids like me?" "Like you how?" he asked gently. "Kids who've been through stuff," he nodded. "Some of them. Others just need a safe place to be. You don't have to talk. You can just sit and draw if you want." She thought about it. Okay, the next day she went. The center was warm, with bright walls and the smell of crayons and cookies baking in the kitchen. A woman with kind eyes and paint-splattered jeans greeted her. "You must be Maya," she said. "We've heard good things," Maya blushed. "From who?" "From a certain quiet man who keeps asking if we have enough chairs for everyone," the woman said with a wink. Maya smiled. She sat at a table with 3 other kids. No one asked about her past. No one stared. They just passed her a sheet of paper and a box of colored pencils and said, "Draw whatever you feel like." She drew a house with a big gate, and a little girl knocking, and a hand reaching through to open it. Later, Daniel found her sitting on the steps outside watching pigeons peck at crumbs. "How was it?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Good," she said. "I think I'll come back. I'm glad." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Maya asked, "Do you ever feel guilty?" He looked at her, surprised. "About what?" "For having so much, while other people have so little." He didn't answer right away. He watched a pigeon strut across the sidewalk, puffing its chest like it owned the place. "Yes," he finally said. "I used to feel guilty all the time, like I didn't deserve what I had. But then I realized guilt doesn't help anyone. What helps is using what you have to lift others up. Not out of pity, but out of respect." Maya thought about that. "Like how you helped us?" "Like how I'm trying to help," he corrected. "Because helping isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice you make every day." Back at the apartment that evening, Maya's mom was sitting at the table sorting through mail. She held up an envelope with official-looking lettering. "They approved it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Maya ran over. "The job?" Her mom nodded. The clinic had offered her a new position, not cleaning or restocking, but as a patient care coordinator. Lighter hours, better pay, full benefits. And they'd made it clear this wasn't charity. It was because they valued her. Daniel had quietly spoken to the clinic's director weeks ago, not to demand it, but to remind them of the woman who'd shown up every day, even when she was exhausted, even when no one noticed. "People like her are the backbone of places like yours," he'd said. "Don't let her slip through your fingers." Now, as Maya hugged her mom, she whispered, "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" "We already are," her mom said, kissing the top of her head. A few weeks later, Daniel invited them both to dinner, not at his big house, but at a small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with red checkered tablecloths and garlic bread that smelled like heaven. It was the first time Maya's mom had been out in public since the attack. She was nervous. She kept smoothing her dress, checking her hair in the reflection of a spoon. "You look beautiful," Daniel said simply when they arrived, and she did, not because of the dress, but because she was present, alive, smiling, over plates of spaghetti and warm bread. They talked about books, about the weather, about Maya's new teacher who loved science experiments. They didn't talk about the past. Not that night, because for once the present was enough. After dinner, as they walked to the car, Maya's mom turned to Daniel. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to," he said, "but I want to." He thought for a moment. "Then do this when you're back on your feet, and you will help someone else. Not because you owe me, but because you know what it feels like to be on the other side." She nodded slowly. "I will." That promise stayed with her. A month later, she started volunteering at a shelter for women and children, just a few hours a week at first. She'd sit with kids while their moms filled out forms or met with counselors. She'd listen. She'd hold hands. She'd say it's going to be okay and mean it, because she knew better than most that sometimes those words are the only lifeline someone has. Maya went with her sometimes. She'd bring coloring books and read stories to the little ones, and in those moments she saw her mom not just as her mother, but as someone strong, someone healing, someone giving back. Meanwhile, Daniel's company had changed too. The new employee support fund had already helped dozens of people. Someone whose child needed surgery, another who'd lost their home in a fire, a single parent struggling with rent after an injury. No fanfare, no names in the news. Just quiet help, delivered with dignity. He also started a scholarship program for kids from underfunded schools, full rides to summer camps, tutoring, even college if they wanted it. When a reporter asked why he was doing it, he just said, "Because every kid deserves a chance to knock on a door and be heard." One rainy afternoon, much like the one that started it all, Maya was helping her mom fold laundry. When there was a knock at their apartment door, they exchanged a look. Visitors were rare. Maya opened the door a crack. Standing there was a girl, maybe 10 years old, drenched from head to toe, clutching a plastic bag. Her eyes were red, her lips chapped. "Hi," the girl whispered. Is this where the lady who helps people lives?" Maya's heart jumped. She looked back at her mom, who came to the door immediately. "Yes," her mom said gently. "Come in, you're safe here." As the girl stepped inside, shivering, Maya grabbed a towel from the bathroom, the same kind Daniel had given her months ago, and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. Later, over hot soup, the girl told her story. Her dad had been laid off. They'd been evicted, and she didn't know where else to go. She'd heard about the kind lady at the Green Building from a school counselor. Maya's mom listened without interrupting. Then she said, "You can stay with us tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step." After the girl fell asleep on the couch, Maya stood in the kitchen with her mom washing dishes. "Do you think Mr. Daniel knows what you're doing?" Maya asked. Her mom smiled. "I think he'd be proud." Maya looked out the window at the rain. "It's funny," she said. "We used to be the ones knocking. Now we're the ones opening the door." Her mom put a hand on her shoulder. "That's how kindness works. It doesn't stop with one person. It keeps going." The next day, Maya called Daniel. Not for help, but to tell him what happened. He was quiet for a moment after she finished. Then he said, "Your mom is an incredible woman." "She learned from the best," Maya said. He laughed softly. "No, she's always been that way. I just helped clear the path." A few days later, he stopped by the apartment with a backpack full of supplies, clothes, toiletries, school notebooks. "For your new friend," he said. He didn't stay long. But as he left, Maya walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For showing me that helping people isn't about being a hero. It's about being human." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. "Peace. You already knew that," he said. "You just needed someone to remind you." That evening, as Maya sat on the window seat reading, she thought about how far they'd come. The fear was still there sometimes, in dreams and sudden noises, but it no longer ruled her. She had her mom. She had a home. She had someone who believed in them both, and Daniel? He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a friend, a quiet force for good, a man who'd let a little girl's knock change the course of his life, not because he had to, but because he chose to. Later that week, he gave a rare public talk at a university. Not about business strategy or technology, but about compassion and leadership. "The most powerful thing you can do," he said, "isn't to build something no one's ever seen. It's to see someone no one else sees." The audience clapped, but he wasn't speaking for them. He was speaking for the little girl in the rain, for the mother fighting to come back, for every person who's ever stood outside a gate hoping someone would answer. And miles away, in a small apartment with laundry on the line and soup on the stove, Maya's mom hugged her new guest. And Maya read a story out loud, her voice steady, her heart full. Because kindness, once planted, doesn't just grow, it multiplies. And sometimes all it takes is one knock and one open door. Years have a quiet way of passing, like pages turning in a book you didn't realize you were reading. The little girl who once stood shivering outside a tall black gate was now a young woman with steady hands and calm eyes. The woman who'd lain in a hospital bed, fading in and out of consciousness, now walked with purpose, her steps sure, her voice clear. And the man who'd opened his door on a rainy night, he still lived in the same house, but it no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a home that remembered kindness. It had been 5 years since that knock. Maya was 17 now, almost 18. She'd just graduated high school with honors, her backpack still smelling faintly of the lavender soap her mom used. She'd been accepted into a state university on a full scholarship, one funded by the very program Daniel had started after everything happened. She planned to study social work, not because she wanted to fix the world, she'd say, but because she wanted to sit with people while they fixed themselves. Her mom worked full-time at the community center now, not as a volunteer, but as a coordinator for families in crisis. She'd helped hundreds of people find shelter, food, counseling. She never talked about her own story unless someone asked, and even then, she kept it simple. I was helped when I had nowhere else to turn. Now I try to be that person for someone else. As for Daniel, he'd stepped down as CEO 2 years ago, not because he failed, but because he'd succeeded in changing the company's soul. He stayed on the board, but his real work happened elsewhere, mentoring, funding shelters, quietly supporting families like Maya's. He never sought recognition. In fact, he'd turned down every interview, every award. The work is the reward, he'd say. But today was different. Today, there was an event, a small fundraiser at the community center, organized to celebrate the opening of a new wing, a safe space for children affected by violence. It wasn't fancy. There were folding chairs, paper plates, and a banner hand-painted by kids in the after-school program. But to those who'd been through the dark, it felt like a palace. Maya stood backstage, smoothing her dress, a simple blue one, not expensive, but clean and bright. Her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't used to speaking in front of crowds, but she'd agreed to say a few words, not as a victim, not as a symbol, just as herself. Her mom stood beside her, holding her hand. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "Yes, I do," Maya said, "because someone has to remind people that hope isn't just a word. It's a choice." Out in the main room, Daniel sat near the back, arms crossed, watching quietly. He hadn't wanted to draw attention to himself, so he wore a plain sweater, no tie, no watch. Just a man among many, but Maya spotted him right away. Their eyes met, and he gave her the smallest nod. Steady, sure. Then her name was called. She walked to the small wooden podium, her heart pounding. The room fell silent. Dozens of faces looked up at her, young, old, tired, hopeful. Some had been through things just as hard as hers. Some were just starting their journey. She took a deep breath. "I'm not here to tell you a sad story," she began, her voice clear despite the nerves. "I'm here to tell you about a knock." She paused, letting the words settle. 5 years ago, I stood outside a gate in the rain. My mom was in the hospital. She'd been hurt. The doctors said she might not make it. We had no money, no home, no one to call. I was 8 years old and I was terrified. She looked out at the crowd, not with pity, but with honesty. I walked for hours to a house I'd only seen on the news. I didn't know the man who lived there. I didn't know if he'd help. But I knocked anyway. And when he answered, I said 3 words. "She's dying. Please." Her voice cracked just a little, but she kept going. He didn't call the police. He didn't shut the gate. He opened it. And in that moment, everything changed. Not just for me and my mom, but for him too. She glanced at Daniel. He looked down, but she saw his shoulders move just slightly as he swallowed hard. "People think kindness is soft," she said. "But it's not. It's the bravest thing there is. Because it means choosing to care when it's easier not to. It means seeing someone when the world looks away." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges, carefully preserved. "This is the letter I wrote him a few weeks after he took us in," she said, unfolding it gently. "I was scared he'd change his mind." So I wrote, "Thank you for seeing us when no one else did." She looked up, her eyes shining. That's all any of us really want. To be seen. To be believed. To be given a chance. She stepped back from the podium and the room stayed quiet for a heartbeat. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon the whole room was on its feet. Not cheering, but honoring. A quiet, powerful wave of respect. Afterward, people came up to her. Some to thank her, some to share their own stories. A woman with tired eyes hugged her and whispered, "My daughter's going through something similar. Your words gave me hope." A teenager nodded and said, "I'm applying to that scholarship next year. You made me believe I could." Maya listened to each one, just as Daniel had once listened to her. Later, as the sun dipped low and the last guests drifted away, Daniel found her sitting on the steps outside the center, just like she had years ago. He sat beside her, not saying anything at first. "You were amazing in there," he finally said. "I was just telling the truth," she replied. "That's the rarest thing of all," he said. They watched the sky turn pink and gold. The city hummed softly in the distance. Cars, laughter, life moving forward. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't knocked?" he asked. She thought about it. "Sometimes. But then I remember I did knock. And you answered. And that's what matters," he smiled. "You know, I used to think success was about building something that lasted forever. A company, a name, a legacy. But now I know better. What's it about then?" she asked. "About moments like this," he said, gesturing to the building behind them. "About the people you helped become who they were meant to be." She leaned her head on his shoulder for just a second, something she hadn't done since she was a child. "You helped me become me, and you helped me remember who I am," he said. Inside the center, her mom was cleaning up, stacking chairs with a few volunteers. She caught Maya's eye through the window and smiled. That smile said everything. "We made it. We're okay. We're more than okay." A few weeks later, Maya moved into her dorm room at university. It was small, with cinder block walls and a narrow bed, but she hung photos on the wall, her and her mom at the park, her and Daniel at the library, a group shot from the community center's summer picnic. On her first day of class, she walked into the social work lecture hall and found a seat near the front. The professor began by asking everyone to share why they'd chosen this path. When it was Maya's turn, she didn't tell the whole story. She just said, "Because once someone saw me when I felt invisible, and I want to do the same for others." The professor nodded. "That's a good reason. It was more than good. It was real." Meanwhile, Daniel started something new. Not a company, not a foundation, just a weekly gathering at his house open to anyone who needed a meal, a conversation, or a quiet place to breathe. He called it the Open Door. No applications. No interviews. Just show up and you're welcome. Rosa still worked with him, now helping coordinate the meals. "You've gone soft in your old age," she teased one evening as they set out plates. He laughed. "Maybe. Or maybe I finally grew up." Back at school, Maya joined a student group that visited shelters and hospitals, reading to kids, helping with homework. One rainy afternoon, eerily like that first night, she sat with a little boy who wouldn't speak. She didn't push. She just sat beside him, coloring in a book until he finally whispered, "My mom's sick." Maya's heart ached, but she stayed calm. "I know how that feels," she said gently. "Want to draw her a picture?" He nodded. And just like that, a new thread of kindness began. Years later, long after graduation, after internships, after late nights and hard choices, Maya would become a counselor at a youth center in the same neighborhood where she and her mom once had nowhere to go. She'd sit with kids who'd seen too much, heard too little, and she'd say, "Tell me your story. I'm listening." And sometimes when a child looked especially lost, she'd add, "You're not alone. Someone will knock for you, or you'll knock for someone else." That's how it works. As for Daniel, he never married, never had children of his own. But his house was never empty. There were always students stopping by, former employees seeking advice, neighbors bringing soup when he was sick. He became known not as a billionaire, but as the man who remembered your name, your story, your favorite kind of tea. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep at 82, his will surprised no one. Everything went to the programs he'd built, the scholarships, the shelters, the open-door gatherings. But tucked inside his desk drawer, his lawyer found a small box. Inside were two things, a child's drawing of a house with a gate, and a folded letter in careful handwriting that said, "You have the biggest heart I've ever seen." At his memorial, Maya spoke, not as a famous person, not as a success story, but as someone who'd been loved when it mattered most. "He didn't save me," she told the quiet crowd. "He saw me, and sometimes that's enough to save a life." The legacy wasn't in buildings or bank accounts. It was in the quiet moments, a mother holding her child's hand in a hospital, a teenager walking into a shelter for the first time, a stranger opening a door on a rainy night. Because kindness doesn't end, it echoes. And it all began with a little girl's voice in the storm, saying the words no child should ever have to say, and a man who chose to listen.